Man, Randy Savage, all these guys back in the day, and up into the Attitude Era, which is really the highlight of my wrestling watching fandom, with Stone Cold and The Rock, Triple H, all those guys, The Undertaker. And I remember when Ken Shamrock showed up, and that was really cool because he came from this mixed martial arts, Ultimate Fighting Championships, cage fighting. I thought it was pretty neat. I really didn't know much about it at the time. And I'm kind of dating myself, giving you an idea when I became a mixed martial arts fan. And then Brock Lesnar, of course, making the transition back, into the UFC, and we saw Bobby Lashley, to a lesser extent, Dave Bautista taking a shot at it for one fight. But I watched Sunday night. I watched the Rumble, the Royal Rumble. I always used to like the Royal Rumble, and because I knew, Ronda Rousey was showing up. I know there was a lot of attempts to mislead the fans, but you knew she was showing up. And quite honestly, I wasn't a fan. I almost at the time was embarrassed for her a little bit. She looked at a place. She almost looked like a starstruck fan in that situation. I felt her pop kind of faded a little bit in that situation. She looked a little bit awkward at times. The pointing business kind of seemed out of place and forced. Pointing at the WrestleMania, and we get it, you're coming to WrestleMania. And the big thing I look at as far as the legitimacy, everybody talked about how we had this women's Royal Rumble, and it was really cool, and legitimized the title fight, just like the men's have their own Royal Rumble. But then if Ronda shows up and basically doesn't wrestle at all in the lead up to WrestleMania and basically takes on one of the champions, what does that not just nullify everything that was done? So one person wins the Royal Rumble, is supposed to grant them a title shot. It's almost like the UFC where you just grant whoever a title shot, whoever's got a big name. And then it's just weird. And honestly, as far as I have a friend of mine who's a big Ronda Rousey fan, and she kind of resonated with what I was saying and echoed a lot of the things I'm saying now, in that it's too bad. It's disappointing to see Ronda quit like that. She lost a couple of fights, emphatically, and she took her ball and went home. She walked away. And when you see stuff like that, you give a lot of credit to somebody like a Holly Holm or a Miesha Tate especially, who have lost fights, big fights, and keep coming back, keep getting better. I know Miesha's retired now, but she lost her title to Ronda Rousey. She came back, she did better. She lost a title fight to Ronda Rousey again, didn't quit. Eventually worked her way into an opportunity to fight. Holly Holm was in trouble in that fight and still won the title. It's perseverance. It's that grit and tough and tough-mindedness. That's Ronda simply doesn't have, or at least isn't showcasing right now. I don't know if she'll ever return. She's not closing the door on that. But, to me, I'd much prefer a fighter who loses a couple of times and puts in the hours, puts in the time, puts in the work, shows that mental fortitude, if you will, to get back in the cage and return to their winning ways. And right now, that's not what Ronda Rousey's exemplifying. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. On this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 125, which will take place on February 3rd in Brazil, featuring 6 main card fights on this episode of the show that I'll be giving predictions for. All of the preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, I'm coming off a fantabulous show. Fantastic show, if you will. I went 10-2 at UFC on Fox. What was it, 27? I lost the main event. And then I lost fight early in the night. And now, I will admit, I'll be the first person to admit it. And I know a lot of people are thinking, well, I was very fortunate with a couple of the decisions. There were some especially the Kim decision, which I felt she did not win that fight. The Dober decision was very questionable. The Feely decision was questionable. Just one of those nights where everything rolls your way. So you have other nights where nothing goes your way or it's a mixed bag. That was one of those nights, with the exception of Joaquim Silva. I pretty much won everything else that was out there to win. Now, as far as my bet packs were concerned, the big risk, big reward bet pack returned 67.62 units. So that's about a 47 unit profit, right in that range. And the big bankroll returned a 66 unit return, which was probably about a 50 unit profit, right in that range somewhere. I forget exactly how much I put down, but still excellent returns. Had Brunson come through, we would have been laughing. We had some massive bet still on the table when Derek Brunson hit the cage. Either way, good performance. And to start the year, again, I always talk about chasing that elusive 300 victories in a calendar year. 299 being the best I've ever got. Last year coming up short at 283. I'm 26-8 through the first 3 fights in 2018. That's pretty fucking good, if you will. So I'm gonna ride with that. The bet packs will be available as always. $15 for an entire card breakdown, not just 1 or 2 fights, the entire thing. You can also buy the subscription for the rest of January and February, which will save you 15 to 20 bucks if you're interested. As I said, my KamikazeOverdrive.net is the home of the bet packs, the predictions for the prelims, and everything else you want to check out on my website. But for now, let's get to that first main card prediction. We open the card up in the UFC's middleweight division for a very, very intriguing matchup as the 15th ranked Thiago Santos, 16-5-0, takes on Lionheart Anthony Smith, 28-12-0. Now, both fighters are on a significant roll looking to climb into contention and work their way towards a top 10 opportunity. Santos has won 3 consecutive bouts, all by finish. He is 7-2 over his last 9 fights in the UFC, and he's really finding his footing despite a 2-fight losing streak a couple fights back. He's really come a long way. For Anthony Smith, he has won 3 consecutive bouts, all by knockout. He is 4-1 since returning to the promotion, and 11-1 over his last 12 fights with 10 stoppage victories. Physically, Smith's a very, very tall middleweight. 6'4", he'll be 4 inches taller than Santos, but they have the same reach. Smith is the younger man by 4 years. Now, these guys are absolute killers when you look at their records. Santos, 11 wins by knockout, 1 submission, compared to just his 4 decision victories on his record. Smith, 15 wins by knockout, 10 wins by submission. That's 25 finishes overall, compared to just 2 victories on the scorecards. Now, on the flip side of things, Santos has been submitted twice. He has been knocked out twice. Conversely, Smith has been knocked out 7 times in his career. He's also been submitted 4 times. So both guys can finish. Both guys can be finished. That usually leads to an action-packed matchup for however long it lasts. Now, with Santos, we know what he's all about. He is an absolute brutal kicking game. Thiago works all areas of the body, looking at the legs, the midsection, the head. He creates openings by targeting one area, and then when he recognizes his opponent starting to guard and lean towards protecting the body, lean towards trying to catch kicks to avoid taking low shots, he'll start targeting other areas that are being opened up. He throws a variety of techniques, all very difficult to deal with because you don't know what's coming next. When he took it a very tough character in Jack Marsh, when he did it with a spinning heel kick, which was absolutely fantastic. Santos is very much becoming a highlight reel type fighter where he lands something almost every fight that's just brutal and crushing. And one thing that's worth noting, he's facing an orthodox striker, and he throws some of his best techniques from the left side, especially high kicks and body kicks, and those options are open against an orthodox striker, and that's something I expect to see him do a lot against Anthony Smith, especially with a taller fighter as that elongated midsection, that middle trunk that is certainly open up to take some big-time damage. Now, with Santos, his hands aren't nearly as good as his kicks, but they have looked better of late. They looked much better against Jack Hermanson. He threw a nice leaping left hook. He'll work in a right jab. And ultimately, he put Hermanson out with a flurry at the end of the round that eventually finished the fight. So I'd say his kicks are exceptional. His hands are starting to catch up. He uses a big wide stance looking to explode into his offense and defend takedowns. He has good takedown defense overall. He'll scramble out of some bad takedown positions when he fought Gerald Mearshart, who took him down a couple of times. He's able to get back up and eventually finished him. And he will punish opponents on takedown attempts. That's a big thing. If you shoot on him and you don't get him down, he's going to make you pay for it. And that's what you have to do as a striker who's going to be the target of grapplers. Make him think twice about putting you on the mat. Once he got on top position in the fight, he landed some good ground and pound to eventually get the finish. He was considering some submission opportunities, but again, he just kept pushing his opponent until he got the stoppage with those big shots. Now, in that fight, though, he did look like he was slowing down a little bit. He throws everything with power, and if you force him to clinch and grapple and defend and out of his comfort zone, that could be, certainly create a cardio deficit that a guy like Anthony Smith could take advantage of. Now, Anthony Smith, he offers a mix of dangerous finishing skills. He can really do it all, and he can compete just about anywhere, but he can also be beaten anywhere, and that's certainly concerning. I remember predicting fights for him back in Strikeforce. I've always been a big fan of Anthony Smith. I think he has a lot of talent, and he's showcasing that now, which is really nice to see. Now, he does a good job when he can overwhelm his opponents with pressure and volume. He likes to pin his opponents on the cage and unload those short punches, slashing elbows. Almost reminds me of Matt Brown in that position, or a Ben Saunders, and he will look to land knees in close. Again, he's a tall guy. He can get that knee up high, drive into the midsection, even look at the chin if he can pull his opponent's head down a little bit. Now, Anthony uses a very wide stance, which lowers his chin, takes away some of that reach and length advantage that he has over some of his opponents, and that's certainly concerning. When he fought Hector Lombard, he actually had some trouble finding his rage against Lombard, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Lombard was throwing big power back, and Smith was a little hesitant to step in there and take those shots to land his own. He does throw a nice left jab. He'll throw a left counter hook as well, and when his opponents move forward, and he pauses with that left constantly to try and disrupt any forward offense that's coming his way. When he took out Lombard, he landed a nice combination, but he was losing that fight. He was getting overwhelmed with flurries, shelling up. He was surviving, but he was losing. Lombard in that fight was having a lot of success with his kicks, throwing low kicks, because Smith has a tendency to lean very heavy on that front leg and really exposing it. And if he's vulnerable to kicks, and we saw his movement certainly taking a hit a bit in that fight, with a guy with a kicker, top level kicker like Thiago Santos, that's going to be a major, major issue. Smith is a good grappler. He could look to take Santos down. Wrestling's not really his forte, but he will attack off his back if he gets taken down or gets knocked down. That's something Santos has to be very mindful of. I don't like the way Smith tends to back up when he's under attack. He gets tired a little bit. Will start throwing single strikes, not nearly as effective in the second half of the fight as he is in the first half. Thiago needs to push, Smith needs to push Thiago, but that's going to cost him his gas tank. He's not a great gas tank either. It's going to expose him to kicks. That lead leg and midsection are going to be absolute areas of vulnerability, and once he starts covering up in those areas, look for Thiago to really open up and attack the head. And Smith, he's a tough dude, but he can't take the shots that he did against Hector Lombard from Thiago Santos. I think eventually Santos will put him down. So my prediction is Thiago Santos to defeat Anthony Smith by knockout. Our second fight in the main card takes place in the UFC's heavyweight divisions. The 15th ranked Tim Jansen, 11-4-0, takes on Brazil's own Marcelo Golm, undefeated at 6-0. Now Golm is replacing fellow Brazilian Luis Henrique. Henrique pulled out of this bout very early in December. So Golm comes into this matchup having almost a full camp to prepare, so that shouldn't be an issue for him. For Johnson, the guy's alternated wins and losses over his last 7. He's coming off a loss to Junior Albini, another upstart Brazilian fighter. It was the first knockout loss of Johnson's career. For Golm, he is coming off a very successful UFC debut. He submitted Christian Colombo, and again, he's still undefeated and looking very good so far. Both men physically 6'3". Johnson will come in at around 265 pounds. That should give him a 15 to even 18-pound advantage in weight over his opponent. 2-inch reach advantage for Timmy, and he is, for Golm, though, Golm is the younger man by 7 years. Now, looking at Marcelo Golm first, he's a BJJ black belt. He has 5 wins by knockout, though. He's coming off his first career submission victory, which he got in the UFC. But that being said, most of his wins have come on the mat, where he's able to get his opponent down, threaten with submissions, but ultimately finish some of the strikes on the floor. He's never fought beyond the first round, which is worth noting. And the question is, how battle-tested is the guy? Prior to Christian Colombo, who was a low-level UFC heavyweight, who went 0-2-1. I think he's out of the promotion now. Golm's last 3 pre-UFC opponents were combined 1 win and 7 losses. Poor record, poor level of experience. And that really brings into question what Golm's capable of against a next-level grinder like Tim Johnson. Now, Golm on the feet, he'll throw a decent left jab. He'll throw a straight right in combination with that jab. He keeps his hands up, which is nice to see. They're fairly tight to his face when he's pressing forward. Again, he's an all-action fighter, so that's important to have good defense. Once he gets his opponent cut off and puts him along the cage, he will start to unload, landing a very hard right hand. And he's got a nice inside low kick when he's at distance. I forgot about that. He'll mix that in once in a while. From the clinch, look for him to use trip takedowns and really try and force his opponent to the mat. I really like how he unloads with ground and pound. He had a 3/4 mount in his last fight, and he was landing absolute massive shots, doing serious damage. It was opening his opponent up for submissions, and he was in a position where he was basically baiting them. He's, I'm going to hit you until you roll over, give me your back, and I'm either going to pound you out or I'm going to submit you. Eventually, he got that rear naked choke finish. But the big question with Golm is, how does he do in rounds 2 and 3? Or, if he's put on his back or put in a position he's not familiar with, where he's on the defensive, how does he do? What happens when he starts to tire? Is he the type of guy who's going to break, having faced next to no adversity in his very, very young career? Now, Johnson, he's the good test. He's the 15th ranked fighter in the division. I would say he is the gatekeeper to the top end. He is a grinding wrestler. He does work both on the cage and on the floor. And when you look at his overall takedown numbers, 1.33 takedowns per fight at a 31% completion rate. He's not putting up big takedowns. He's not scoring 3-4 takedowns around and just smashing guys on the mat. 69% takedown defense. He keeps working for takedowns. He's difficult to take off his feet, so as long as he's trying and pushing forward, that gives him an advantage in the grappling scenario. He has been taken down in fights. Volkov, Marcin Tybura, Jared Ralshaw all took him down. He won one of those fights, lost the other 2. He's never landed more than 1 takedown in a fight. At least that's what Fight Metric tells us. And I find that hard to believe, having watched a lot of his fights, but hey, we'll go with the stats here. What he does, though, and his game is a little bit simplistic, but very effective. He pushes forward behind heavy combinations, throwing 3, 4, 5 punch combinations or flurries, if you will. I like to say flurries if I don't think they're not feeding off each other when he's throwing them. They're more just in succession. He keeps his chin tucked when he's pushing forward, and he moves forward. Once he punches his way into the clinch, he will land knee strikes, short punches, maintain his underhooks, stay busy to avoid a ref separation, and possibly look for a takedown. If not, grind out the position, force his opponent to work his way off the cage. Now, when he fought Albini, once they got separated, he was cracked with a left hand, and the ensuing combination eventually put him down. And because he pushes forward so willingly to engage, it does open him up, take some damage, especially with counter strikes. Johnson's last fight was coming off shoulder surgery and a shoulder injury, so you wonder, did that hinder his performance? Quite possibly, especially for a guy who focuses on leverage and controlling opponents on the cage. Was he not 100%? His style is simple, but very effective. Again, punch, move forward, clinch, and grind. Get the takedowns if they're there. If not, hold position on the wall. Golm's never been tested beyond the first round. That'll be the key here. He's got some pop in his hands, but again, primarily he does his finishing on the mat. Johnson's no easy person to put on the ground, so I'd say Golm's going to have to hurt him on the feet to get him down and possibly finish him in that scenario. The way I look at it, with Johnson's grinding style, it's going to test Golm. He's going to grind him out, control him against the cage, drag him into rounds 2 and 3 where Golm will start to break, and my prediction is Timothy Johnson to defeat Marcelo Golm. I'll take Johnson by TKO with an exhausted opponent unable to defend strikes. So Johnson by TKO. Our next fight on the card takes place in the UFC's lightweight division as Michel Tractor Prazeres 22-2-0 takes on the Predator Desmond, or Des Green, currently holding a record of 20 wins and 5 defeats. Now, Green is coming off a loss to Rustam Khabilov after a split decision win over Josh Emmett in his debut. He had won 5 in a row, capping it with the Emmett victory. For Prazeres, he has won 5 consecutive fights, his last 2 by submission, and he's been looking strong of late, winning 7 of his last 8 matchups. Physically, Green, 4 inches taller. He'll have a 6-inch reach advantage over the diminutive Prazeres. The American is 8 years younger, but Michel is a massive, thick individual, built like a brick shithouse, if you will. But at the same time, he has missed weight in each of his last 2 bouts, so that has to be a little bit concerning. Looking at Green first, he's a former NCAA Division I wrestler, and he likes to close. In previous bouts, we haven't seen so much of it lately in the UFC. He likes to close distance and look to wrestle. He's got a reactive takedown game. He times his opponent's forward push, shoots in, and puts them on the mat. But again, we haven't seen a lot of that in UFC. He's been more on the defensive in these scenarios. Overall, he's good takedown defense, an excellent sprawl game. He does a very nice job of establishing his underhooks once his opponent shoots in, good balance, and just eventually force them to, give up on the takedown attempt and go back to striking. Now, when he fought Khabilov, who was an absolute takedown machine, he was taken down with a couple of suplexes early, but he got right back up, and he was defending takedowns for the most part. But you have to keep in mind, he was defending takedowns, but he was still being pushed around, not winning any striking exchanges, not making that positional victory count. What I do like out of Green, I've seen he's being very patient. He circles away. He survives big power punches, and he's returning with those short, tight, 50% power punches that are much sharper and more efficient and score points. They might not knock an opponent out, but you put enough of them together, they'll do damage, and they score points to the judges, and you're still able to throw them in rounds 2 and 3, where these guys who wing these big friggin' hooks, they start to gas out and crash. Now, against Khabilov, he was very aggressive early. He kind of settled in and wasn't landing enough strikes in the middle part of the fight, and then as the fight advanced into round 3, he started picking up the intensity and kind of going for broke when he realized he was behind in the scorecards. And a lot of that I think that could be attributed to the fact that he was probably focused on defending takedowns and not opening himself up to getting, blasted with a double leg or giving up a single. And that was kind of his understanding, was if you stayed smart defensively, you'll avoid getting taken down, but he was still losing the fight. Now, Prazeres, he has an excellent takedown game, an exceptionally heavy top game. He has showcased his submission skills of late, and again, he's a big physical man, and once he gets on top of you, he is absolutely crushing. Look for him to drive forward with a low shot, usually a double leg for that takedown. Even his opponent, in one of his last fight against, was it Mads Burnell? Burnell was able to kind of get his balance on that first initial push on the double leg, and Prazeres just said F no, and he just powered through it and drove him to the mat very impressively. What Prazeres does, especially even when he's not looking for takedowns, he's constantly moving forward. He uses a lot of pressure, throws those hard hooks in the inside, almost Hector Lombard-ish. He'll mix in some kicks once in a while, but again, he's always going to close that distance, and you don't know if he's going to throw punches or he's going to change levels for a takedown. Now, his cardio is a question mark. As I mentioned, he's missed weight in each of his last 2 fights, and how long can he fight like this without a slowdown? Can he get 2 rounds in the books before he gasses out? That's a big question mark. That's the key. If he can't get takedowns and he's forced to strike the entire duration of a 3-round fight, how well will he hold up? Now, he is 3-1 when fighting in the UFC in Brazil. He's 1-1 when fighting Brazilians, so his only loss coming against, was it Paulo Thiago he lost to? I can't remember. Paulo Thiago, was he lose to Paulo Thiago in Brazil? I'm not 100% sure. But either way, pretty good record when fighting at home. Green, again, I said he seems hesitant to engage Khabilov, I think for fear of being taken down. Even though he has good takedown defense, he needs to be active without exposing himself against that hard push of Prazeres. I think Prazeres is going to push forward. He's going to score with power strikes and pressure. And if Prazeres can take Green down, that's going to add to his offense. I think Des Green's going to come off too defensively focused. And, fighting in Brazil will be an added boost for Prazeres overall. And my prediction is Michel Prazeres to defeat Des Green by potentially contentious and close decision. The ladies hit the cage for our fourth fight of the night as former bantamweight title challenger Valentina Bullet Shevchenko of Kurdistan, 14-3-0, takes on the debuting Priscila, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but Cachoeira, I don't know, Cachoeira, let's go with that, affectionately known as Zombie Girl. She's undefeated, fighting out of Brazil at 8 wins and no losses. Now, Shevchenko, she is coming off her title fight loss against Amanda Nunes. So we have a post-title fight letdown scenario, but there's an asterisk beside it, simply because Shevchenko's moving to 125 pounds. It's a new division. It's a new beginning. It's a new opportunity. She's expected, I would think, to be in title contention very soon. A lot of people feel she's the uncrowned champion just waiting for opportunity. It would not surprise me in the least if she wins this bout, if she does not get an immediate title shot, because there are a lot of girls, Jessica Ai, Shevchenko, there's a number of girls who are looking for their opportunity to fight for the title, who are more marketable, more experienced, and more well-known than the current UFC champion in the division. So I think it's only a matter of time before the Sharks start circling. We see Shevchenko getting that opportunity. Now, Cachoeira, she's making her, again, that sounds brutal, she's making her UFC debut. She was pegged to face Lauren Murphy at the Ultimate Fighter finale, but she had issues, I believe, with her visa, so she couldn't get into the country, and that prevented the fight from happening. Murphy went on to pick up a big victory over Barb Honchak. So, hey, you got what you got there. Cachoeira, she is, I'm saying it different every time. We're going to go with Priscila. Let's go with Priscila. She is 2 inches taller than Valentina Shevchenko, and that's all we know as far as physical comparisons are concerned. Shevchenko, though, she's moving down from 135 pounds. She was smaller, noticeably smaller, but she didn't seem overpowered by any stretch of the imagination. And that's a big thing here. If she can make the cut without really draining herself and maintain that strength, that's a huge factor. Now, the Brazilian is undefeated, 4-0 in 2017, 4 wins by knockout, 4 decision victories on her career. Her last 3 opponents fairly respectable, 21 wins and 17 losses, so they've got some, that's decent for the regional scene. But when you look at her numbers, her fighting style, she is an all-offense fighter, willing to absolutely absorb whatever damage she has to unload with her own haymakers. She comes forward, cuts off the cage, and backs her opponent up and just starts smashing. She wings massive, heavy punches. She actually showed some decent head movement, and she just arguably she keeps throwing until the fight ends or her opponent goes down. It's one of the two options. I'm just going to keep throwing strikes. It's almost like The Simpsons. I'm going to keep moving my mouth until it's not my fault if I eat this pie. I'm going to keep throwing punches. It's not my fault if I knock this chick out. But that's the way she does things. She tends to be a little bit sloppy, and she will fade with time because the way she fights is very difficult to maintain that approach. For the most part, she's even able to overwhelm her opposition. That could be a major issue, though, once she moves up in competition again here, facing Valentina Shevchenko, who's a much more experienced and composed fighter than she has faced in the past. Shevchenko, excellent striker, good technique, decent power, not overwhelming. Throws a variety of striking techniques, good kicking game. She beat Holly Holm in a striking match. That's damn impressive. No matter who you are. When she fought Amanda Nunes, which I picked her to beat Nunes, I felt it was one of those fights that really was not enjoyable. I struggled to see them putting that fight together again, but, it was just, ugh. She ultimately lost that fight because of lack of activity. I thought she'd come out and learn from her first fight and push Nunes early and get some rounds in the books, get her tired and take her out or win a decisive decision. She did none of that. And at times she tends to let her opponents dictate the pace. She can be a bit of a slow starter, which is a problem, especially in a 3-round fight against a person who fights you like she's fired out of a cannon, like Priscilla's going to. Shevchenko, she's strong in the clinch, so that's something I could see her try to lock down those close quarter combinations. She's very strong in the clinch. She'll land knees, elbows. She'll work takedowns if needed. She showed her submission game against Pena. Once she got put on the mat, she was able to lock up a submission. But Shevchenko, she's going to need to weather the storm early in this fight and eventually take the fight over as Cachoeira slows down. She should find success with the counters and movement and force Priscila to really chase her on the cage and wing shots with very limited success. Look for Shevchenko to eventually gain a superior position, potentially on the mat. Look for one of those takedowns like we saw in the past, especially against Nunes, and look for the ground and pound against a gassed and overwhelmed opponent. And my prediction is Valentina Shevchenko to defeat Priscila Cachoeira by TKO. We move now to the co-main event of the evening. It's a fight going down in the bantamweight divisions. The 8th-ranked John the Magician Dodson, 20 wins, 9 losses. former flyweight, 2-time flyweight title challenger, taking on the 10th ranked, the young Punisher Pedro Munhoz, fighting out of Brazil with a record of 15 wins, 2 losses, and a single no contest. This is a very big fight for both men. The division is incredibly stacked, and these guys are trying to insert themselves into a very crowded title conversation at 135 pounds. Does a win here give either one of these guys a shot at the title? Absolutely not. But it gets them that next step and maybe gets them in line with an opponent who could get them that much closer. Dodson comes into this matchup having alternated wins and losses over his last 6 fights. He has 2 losses in that span by split decision, both against Brazilians, worth noting. I don't think either one was in Brazil, so that's also worth noting. Munhoz has won 4 fights in a row, 3 finishes, all by submission, all by guillotine, because he is a fucking guillotine monster. Absolutely. We'll talk about that in a bit. Physically, Munhoz 3 inches taller. Dodson will have a 2-inch reach advantage, though, and Munhoz is the younger man by 2 years. Now, we have 2 specific and contrarian styles when you're looking at these 2 guys. Dodson wants to be elusive. Hard to find in the cage, hard to hit, and then land that power, land enough volume to take a decision, land enough power to put you down. For Munhoz, he is looking to find that submission moment in a scramble, in a chaos scenario where he's able to catch you, transition, lock it up, because the guy's got a bloody awesome transition game. You watch some of the creative positions he grabs that guillotine out of, and it's damn impressive. And so yeah, one guy wants to be right in your face and on top of you. The other guy wants to be out on the outside and picking away at you. Munhoz, he's never been stopped in 18 fights. So that's going to, it's not saying it can't happen. He's been buzzed a couple times, certainly hurt, but he's never been finished in 18 fights. Dodson's never been submitted in 28 fights. So something's got to give here, you'd think. Not necessarily, but hey, we'll see. Dodson, he tends to be elusive, but at times he has had issues landing enough offense to win matchups. He's got that Lyoto Machida issue where, he's avoiding taking damage, or at least it looks like he is. Is he doing enough? Like that John Lineker fight. He landed 101 significant strikes. I picked Lineker in that matchup, and I figured it would play it almost exactly as it did, with Lineker edging out a split decision by coming forward, landing enough offense, and coming forward. Dodson landed 101 strikes, didn't win the matchup. Too much backtracking, too much fighting off his back foot. He throws he throws quick and he throws hard. He's got a nice right jab. He'll work in some low kicks as well. He took out Manny Gambier with a series of short right hands. Again, it's that power. If he hurts you, he knows how to finish, and he overwhelms you with quick shots. Now, he did have a knee injury. He's getting up there in age. I think he's 33, which is pretty old for the division. And he could be slowing down a bit. He tends to hold his right hand a little bit low, which opens him up for left-handed strikes. Munhoz does throw some decent stuff from the left side. Lineker overall had success by constantly moving forward. Can Munhoz do the same? Lineker has an ironclad chin, wasn't afraid of getting cracked. Can Munhoz offer a similar approach in this fight? Munhoz, he's got decent power in his hands, despite the lack of KOs on his record. He moves forward, he throws with power, he's got decent leg kicks. But his goal is to create a grappling exchange, and that he knows if he keeps pushing forward, he could, and he's done it in the past, force his opponents to change levels and look for a takedown. That's exactly what he wants. When he fought Rob Font, who's a very composed, very good striker, he just kept the pressure on him, working a left jab, throwing big hooks, eventually stunned him, hurt him with a left hook, forced him to shoot, guillotine tap almost right away because the guy's got to squeeze like a motherfucker. He is willing to sit and trade. He does get hit. We saw Russell Doan cracking him several times before. And again, in that fight, we saw Munhoz get the back. He created a scramble, got the back, and eventually it was just an impressive float over. He just forced Doan into a position, and then boom, locked up that guillotine. Only needs one opportunity to put that fight away. Dodson's style again is to avoid damage, do enough to win the fight if he can't score the knockout. He may have slowed down a bit, as I said. He's become a little bit less effective. He's in a bit of a funk, if you will. He's lost a little bit of foot speed, quite possibly, which takes away his overall offense, both offense and defense. It takes away from both. Dodson has to score a finish, I think, in this fight. He's going to struggle to do enough with the Brazilian judges without moving forward aggressively, hurting Munhoz. If he can't stop him, he's going to have to hurt him and land some volume. He's 8-9 in decisions, and those decision losses are starting to creep up, and that's why. Munhoz can take a shot, but he should work on constantly, he's still going to constantly move forward. He's going to look for the, takedown, look for a submission, force Dodson to maybe shoot on him, possibly, which isn't really Dodson's forte. Ultimately, I think Munhoz outlands him, uses that forward pressure to edge him out in a very close fight, maybe gets a submission opportunity. I don't think it's going to happen. Dodson's pretty difficult to hold on to. And my initial gut pick here was Dodson just by doing enough volume. I think Dodson's going to be his own worst enemy, too much avoiding. Munhoz will be too aggressive. And my prediction is Pedro Munhoz to defeat John Dodson by decision, possibly a split, but Munhoz edges it out. Main event time now in the middleweight division is the former light heavyweight champion, the 13th ranked Lyoto, the Dragon Machida. 22 wins, 8 losses, takes on, Eryk with an undefeated record of 10 wins and 0 defeats. Now, this is a very interesting fight. Machida appears to be done competing against the elite level of the division. For Anders, he is exceptionally early in both his UFC and pro careers. 2 UFC fights, 10 pro fights overall. So 2 guys in vastly different scenarios at this point in their careers. We'll see which one comes out here. Machida has lost 3 consecutive matchups and 4 of his last 5. But you look at that murderer's row of guys he's taken on. Lost to Chris Weidman for the title. Lost to Luke Rockhold, who eventually went on to win the title. Lost to Yoel Romero, who challenged for the title. And lost to Derek Brunson, who's just a fucking good fighter. And cost me a lot of money last weekend, but still a pretty good top 5 fighter. Tough opposition. For Anders, he's undefeated. He destroyed Rafael Natal, who promptly retired. And he took a decision over, Perez. Why is his name escaping me right now? Either way, he took a decision over a debuting fighter in his last matchup. Just the 3rd decision of his very short 10-fight career, which we'll talk about momentarily. Both guys 6'1", 1-inch reach advantage for Anders. He is 9 years younger than the Dragon. Machida's last fight, keep in mind, came after a 16-month layoff. So he should be a little bit better in this matchup as far as his timing is concerned. His ring rush shouldn't be as big an issue. Now, the question first I have to talk about is Anders ready for this opportunity? He's fighting a former champion, a former title contender, a top-ranked guy, very well-known and well-respected mixed martial artist. It's worth noting he has finished 6 of his first 7 opponents. Now he's gone the distance in 2 of his last 3 matchups with step-up in competition. Is his style hitting a bit of a wall until he rounds? Because he just doesn't come from a combat background. He comes from a football background. He's a great athlete. Alabama college player, part of those big dynasties. But again, there's only so far. Your athletic ability can only carry you so far, and eventually hit a ceiling where you got to start tuning up your overall skill level to match what you can do physically. What he can do physically is impressive, though. He's got big power with his left hand. He's got power in his right, too, but he really likes to land that left hand. He looks to create chaos and land power in the rush and knock you the fuck out. That's what he wants to do. Press forward, big wild swings. He will as much as run down his opponent, chase them across the cage. Against Natal, he did a much better job cutting off the cage and forcing him against the wall and looking to land power, but he still got wild and overexerted himself at times. When he fought Perez, he was closing the distance and clinching up a little bit, landing some short punches, but he never got that. He landed some big shots. Perez had a pretty good chin on him. But we didn't see Anders really tee off on him to the point where it's like, holy shit, he should be going down. Excuse me. He'll work some knees along the cage. He does his best work when he gets his opponent backed against the cage and really limits their movement. And then he can, his offense is a little bit simplistic, but he can unload with it. Lots of single strikes. He'll mix in the odd multi-punch combination. He threw a hell of a nice uppercut against Perez through the guard and cracked him. Didn't see enough of it. But again, if it's one of those techniques, if you can mix it in, suddenly everything else opens up because you have to be worried about a shot coming from underneath as opposed to around the outside. Now, when he fought Perez, he was slowing down in that fight. Now, he won the fight because Perez slowed down more than he did. He took that fight on short notice. But Anders was slowing down. If the fight hits the mat, big ground and pound for Eryk. He can really do a lot of damage. And that's something, again, if he gets on top, look out. He's going. And Machida has been finished quite frequently in his recent fights by being put on the ground and pounded out. Now, Machida, he can't beat the elite anymore. It's not there. Unless we see a massive turnaround, he's not going to beat the top guys. But he slips so much that he can't beat an opponent at this level. Taking nothing from Anders, he's still very green. Machida's style is built on speed and timing, but now that he's older, a little bit slower, maybe a little rusty in his last matchup, is it no longer an effective way for him to fight? And again, is it no longer effective to fight against the top level guys? Will it work here against a guy who's not used to facing that type of offense and having to put up that type of defense to deal with it? With Derek Brunson, knocked Machida out eventually, but Machida was, avoiding some of his early shots, landing some counter strikes, but again, he got tagged in a bull rush, which is what Anders is going to want to do, but is he as capable as what Brunson is capable of? Machida's style much more suited to hold up for 5 rounds if his chin can get him there. If he can avoid getting tagged early, I think that's certainly to his advantage, obviously. This is Anders' first 5-round fight, and he's fighting in hostile territory against a better, experienced opponent than he's faced at any point in his career. Machida has been a shell of his former self, big knockout losses, submission losses, but he has faced elite-level competition. So 2 former champions, former title challenger, and a top 5 guy in Brunson. Anders is not there yet, I don't think. Unless he catches Machida in a bull rush, I just don't see it. And when he expends himself, every time he throws that hard push forward to track him down, if he doesn't knock him out, you're going to see that meter drop down a little bit, and that's going to bring the Machida speed factor back into play. His technique is better. He's going to be more dangerous, especially as Anders gets more tired, slows down, becomes more flat-footed. Machida needs to stay elusive over the first round or two, make Anders swing and miss, chase him, make him almost chase him down with the first 2 rounds and tire him out. Once Anders starts to slow down, Machida will find more and more success with his offense. And Machida, I think, is eventually going to take him out after he gasses. My prediction is Lyoto Machida. We're going to go one more time with the Dragon. Lyoto Machida to defeat Eryk Anders by TKO. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 125. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, are available on the website. You can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. The bet packs, which have been on fire in 2 of the first 3 shows of the year. Let's hope it keeps going. And I wonder if some of my success isn't because I'm waiting a little bit longer, putting a little bit more time into my main card predictions. I noticed a trend at times. I would be kicking ass on the prelims, and then I would start to struggle once I got to the main card, even though they were more well-known fighters with more experience predicting those fights. And what was happening was because I was trying to get my show out Sunday, Monday, at the latest Tuesday, I wasn't putting a lot of time into breaking these fights down, where now, here I am Wednesday finishing it up. I've put an extra day into breaking these fights down. I'll still put some time into the prelims. Won't do as extensive a write-up, but still put the research in, and maybe I'm finding more success. Let's hope we keep it rolling. So, I can't guarantee anything, but the bet packs certainly have produced the last couple of shows, and we could do better, and we will do better. Let's keep it going that way. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate every single one of you who tunes in to carry my show every single week. Push me over 1,000 views in 4 days, which, hey, I'm not complaining. I'll take it every time. Click on the sponsors and ads, people. It helps pay my bills, which is always nice and appreciated. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Hi.